talk about the news, and it is a fantastic day for the news. What's coming out of Hungary right now is nothing short of amazing. This is wonderful, wonderful news. Um, Orban is one of the uh, one of the biggest problems in Europe. Okay. Um, Ukraine is probably the biggest military problem since it's an active combat theater. But at least Ukraine still has a leader who believes in Western standards of democracy. Um, that's not true with Viktor Orban. He has been he was always an authoritarian leaning guy. He got far worse the longer he stayed in power, which matches the dictator map that I've been speaking to about the dictators of the 20th century. The longer they're in power, the harsher they tend to become. This was true for a lot of people. Slobodan Milosevic, Saddam Hussein, Idi Amin, the Ceausescu's, Hoxha in Albania. There was a bunch of them, and mania in power when there are these authoritarian figures, and you could say the same thing on the left with the far left with Maduro and Chavez. Okay, they did the same thing and also had this clinging to power sensation the longer they stayed around. So the good news is the vote was not even close. It is a fucking blowout. This is the equivalent in a hockey game, in an ice hockey game, having like a 13-2 score. Okay. There's no saying the team that got 2 goals won or had a good game or had a good showing or put up a good effort. No. When you get your ass handed to you that bad in a hockey game, been there, done that. I think when I was a kid, we're playing for, lived in such a small town. I had to go to the next town over to join their team because we were too small to get up any team. And so we had to join up with another small team. The bigger cities, they had like A through E teams. And man, we played the bigger cities. They hammered us. I think the first time we played 16 acres, I think we lost 12-0. So yeah, I know what it's like to be in a hockey game that bad. The good thing is Peter Magyar, the guy who won the election against Orban, looked like he's going to have Reuters is being cautious, so I'm going to use the most cautious read of this. It looks like it's going to be a supermajority. We'll know in a few hours. Supermajority plus how many seats? Right now, it's kind of looking like supermajority plus 5, which is a massive, massive shift in power, not just for Hungary, but all of Europe, all of the world. Okay. I'm following several channels. I have multiple tabs open and follow this. I'm very excited. I'm not as excited as when the Berlin Wall came down. You know, my wife is German. Her family's German. I served in West Germany. I lived there for years. I never thought that I would see the Berlin Wall fall in my lifetime. And when it did, wow. It's not as big as that, but it's still pretty darn big. I'm quite elated today. I am joyous about this outcome. Magyar came out and did the right thing by several reports. He's talking about returning a wounded nation back to its proper self. Perfect victory speech. That's exactly what the winner should be talking about today. It shouldn't be talking about shoving things down people's throats on any political angle. It should be talking about going back to normality and moving away from authoritarianism. Okay. And that seems to be happening here. the fact that they sent JD Vance, who's basically herpes, AIDS, and Ebola, to any right-wing election right now. Everybody hates JD Vance. Okay, there's one thing the human race agrees on. JD Vance is an asshole. Okay, I don't even think the people like his sponsor, Peter Thiel, actually thinks much of him. He's just a useful tool. Emphasis on tool. Okay. This election will end 16 years of rule by Orban as the prime minister, an increasingly authoritarian asshole with poor relations with the worst people in the world. That includes Putin, Trump, Bolsonaro. So having one less figure like this in charge, and the fact that JD Vance goes to Hungary and made it worse for Orban. The daily polls showed Vance had an immediate negative effect. And Vance also chipped away at MAGA back home, because even MAGA figured out the hypocrisy about interfering with foreign elections. Yeah, you're over there in Budapest doing this shit while crying about foreign interference somewhere else. Yeah, you came out as total hypocrites, and you further irritated beyond fuel prices, beyond the Iran war. MAGA is a pane of glass shattering right now. And this win tonight by the opposition in Hungary, Trump's tweets were insane. I'm going to put the entire economic might of the United States behind Hungary. Why you deconstruct America, you're going to put our economic money behind Hungary as long as you get a dictator buddy reelected? Fuck you. Twice. Some great election jokes up here. Now that we settled the debate, now we have to have the real debate. Is the better game Pong on Atari or beer pong with Natty Ice? That's just funny. A lot of good articles being written by some big accounts here on Substacks. Check them out. They're calling out a moment in time. Take some time to read some of these. Some of the inflection points that are being described. Jojo from Jersey, from Jers. MAGA Meltdown is here. It's goddamn glorious. Good read. I came to the same conclusion, sitting at brunch today and seeing the news, and then following up when I got back home. Orban just didn't. Orban is not the only one who lost today. Trump took a huge loss today. He put all his effort, including sending his VP there, including telling them that he will literally rob America, to welfare's Orban's dictatorship if you just vote him back in again. Okay. And it blew a media back up in Vance's and Trump's face. Blew up back home, blew up in Europe, blew up in Hungary specifically. I mean, the minute JD Vance started talking, Hungarians were like, no, we know who we're voting for. Anybody else but the guy you're supporting, because we see the connection. They understood they weren't just voting against Orban in Hungary. They were voting against pan-nationalism. They were voting against Kim Jong-un. They were voting against Nigel Farage. They were voting against Putin. They were voting against Trump. They were voting against Bolsonaro, even though he's in prison now. Good. They were voting against idiots like Moon in South Korea, who looks like he's going to face life in prison over his coup attempt there. Okay. This was a wide referendum. 29 minutes ago, Local is reporting slight narrowing, but broader outcome is still holding, with 95.63% of the national Hungarian vote counted. The opposition party now holds 137 seats, the TISA party, with Orban's Fidesz KDMP party holding 55 seats, and the far-right Hazak only has 7 seats. And that's even the better news than Orban losing. Our homeland, that's what it translates to, my Hazak, it means our homeland, is like AfD in Germany. They're just Nazi-adjacent fuckheads who should not be listened to. Any ethno-nationalist bullshit party should be dismissed out of hand. Okay? So it looks like TISA, the opposition party against Orban, has slipped 1 seat, but remains now 4 above the supermajority level. Okay, with 95.63%, this looks like this is pretty close to the final count. Okay, so this is just amazingly good news. Of course, you know, with Dear Leader Pornstar Humper around, all good news is immediately met with horrible news. It looks like the U.S. Navy, on orders of Dear Leader Pornstar Humper, will blockade the Strait of Hormuz, doing what Iran is doing, starting at Monday morning, 10 a.m. For your fuel expertise, your energy expertise, hit up Matt Rudolph, Mr. Global, in his new podcast. I really like the military guy, one of the 3 guys on his new podcast. Where fuel prices are going, they kind of went up on the West Coast. Diesel, I just put this up in notes. Diesel is kind of panned out for a week, but it's still super high. It's leveled out at about 829.9. 8.299, 29 9/10. I don't know why we price gasoline like that. But if the Houthis start shooting, which they did, on the other side, on the Mansad, whatever, the other side of the other side of the peninsula, if both sides get shut down and all shipping gets bogged down, and we're going to blockade too, you're talking a global economic and a global fuel crisis that's going to start within 30 days. And I mean global, and I mean crisis. Okay. Did some research on this. Let me find my panel here. Did some analysis here. Let me pull this over so I can read it better. Okay, 0 to 30 days with both sides closed, Hormuz and Menasab, or how the hell you say the other one, the other side of the peninsula. We're gonna the Brent, the dated Brent is still high. It's about $1.25 right now, 125 and change. WTI is a little less, but we have about a $30 spread between I need a barrel now and I need a barrel on contract. Okay, that spread's kind of high. Okay, that's not a red flag, but it's definitely a yellow flag. Okay, but the problem is if you shut down both sides of the peninsula, those are 2 of the biggest shipping lanes in the world. You start taking another big chunk of not just fuel shipping, but downstream products, fertilizer, urea, phosphorus, also products that are shipping to and from all the other consumer products that are shipping through or to and from the Middle East. That's all going to get shut down. So you're going to see immediate oil, diesel, jet fuel, liquefied natural gas. We're going to go into total price shocks. If this thing lasts more than 2 weeks, I'll make a bet that we'll see $10 a gallon diesel on the West Coast. Like I said, we're at $8.29 right now, and that price is held for about 9 days. Okay, and I'm using one. And when you see those posts, those notes, that's the Chevron station by the highway, to give you a high point, because the ones up in the hills and the ones down by the main highway, those are the ones that have the biggest gas prices. And they, what I have to look up is like, what are the farm and the trucking cards paying at the pump right now for diesel? You know, because if you're a farmer or a logistics trucker or whatever, or you're driving the truck that takes the whatever, the artichoke, the lettuce off the fields, and you got to drive it to the processing center. They all have a fuel system, and it's all carded, membership, like Costco for truckers, basically, or logistics and farms. I think it's Ace is one of the companies here. I got to look it up and see what they're selling a barrel for. A gallon for it at a pump active right now. They're on more volume sales there, so they should be a few percentage cheaper. But if their price spike is following the main price spike, the contract long-term diesel price is following the spot price at the pump, yeah, we're having fuel shock. Okay, and that once you have diesel fuel shock, every other price downstream, because everything is moved by diesel in this country, everything is farmed by diesel in this country. Okay, there's very limited alternative fuels in major trucking and major farming in this country. So diesel is the key to everything here. It's the bottom of the pyramid. Everything is affected above. Here's a problem. They've already started shooting. I think they hit one ship today. War insurance is going to explode again. The vessel insurance, the insurance on the vessel itself, plus the contents they're carrying in the vessel at the time. That could explode to a point where it's not going to be cost effective to move the ship, or the big carriers and the big underwriters are going to stop writing policies. The shipping company is going to call up, and the underwriter is going to hang up the phone on them. It happened when the Houthis started shooting, and that we had the little mini version of this a couple of years ago. And of course, everybody, including our allies, are going to have to start tapping into their strategic reserves, and they're going to start doing that at a faster pace. That's a problem. Because once you tap everything out of your reserves, you got no cushion left. No cushion for a real problem. Not one you're creating through bad policy. Then you get the backlog problem. I'm hearing several people talk about this. Once you fill up the pipelines and the storage, then you can't pump anymore. Once you stop pumping, there's a restart period. Okay. Once you start shutting down these factories and these refineries, there's a restart period. Sometimes it's weeks, sometimes it's months. With the big factories like the aluminum plants in the Middle East, that's going to take 6 months to a year to cycle back up. If they don't have the natural gas to run and do the work, they have to shut down. Okay. So backlogs, forced production cuts, just stuff missing off the shelves. We're talking like core items like nickel and aluminum products. We already have a utility price problem in America. I'm seeing West Virginia is getting electric bills for homes, small homes, hovels getting electric bills for $1,200 a month. That's hundreds of dollars more than their mortgage. Okay, what are you going to do when you shut down both sides, both transit lanes around the Arab Peninsula, the Arabian Peninsula, and wreak havoc around the world? Your prices are just going to get higher. The fuel costs are going to get higher. The electricity generation costs are going to get higher. Inflation's going to skyrocket. Like I said, this lasts anything more than a couple of weeks and we go beyond 30 days, the 30 to 90-day period starts to get ugly. Everything starts getting affected because of the energy shortage: freight, fertilizer, plastics, chemicals, aviation, trucking, food distribution, power pricing. Everything starts to reprice. And if you thought COVID inflation was bad, this is going to be far worse. By the end of 3 months of this, then you're going to have airline, shipping firms, chemical firms, entire emerging markets getting under balance sheet pressure. They won't be able to pay their bills. Okay. If you can't go through your workflow and make a dime because your base commodity got all screwed up, and then a whole bunch of commodities get screwed up downstream, you're going to throw countries into tizzies, and it's going to be ugly. And those countries include our stalwart allies like South Korea. Countries like Malaysia, they kind of pump a lot of their own hydrocarbons, so they have a little bit of an offset, but they don't do all their own refineries, and they don't do all their petrochemical processing by themselves. Okay. China weeks ago said they were going to stop exporting certain stuff. That's already hit countries like Australia and Malaysia and Indonesia. This could get far, far, far worse. If this lasts beyond the 3-month period and we start looking at the 6-month, the 180-day period, you're talking about massive reconstruction on the fly of economies. Okay. Stagflation becomes a risk in almost every industrialized country. Recession is almost guaranteed for most of those countries. Permanent trade reconfiguration starts, and not all of that is going to be, all that reconfiguration is going to be positive. Some of it will be negative. Again, missing products, missing supply chain elements, not going back to reasonable prices, permanent inflation on some products, that sort of thing. Well, the longer we fight this, the longer they're going to ask for more military budget. They're already asking for $200 billion plus $600 billion more. Now we're going to run a naval blockade. How much money are they going to ask for? $1 trillion extra? We're already at $960 billion plus 200 plus 600. Okay. What are they going to not ask for 1.5, 1.7 trillion in a year? They're going to ask for 2.5 trillion to do this shit. Okay. That's budget busting. That's busting the American budget and crashing the treasury. Good luck with that. Governments all over the world, United States and all our allies, the political systems start to destabilize at the margins. There's no way you can take high fuel, high food, blackouts, unemployments, and just complete blowouts to some industry because you not just stopped fuels, raw oil and all the downstream fuels, you're also affecting fertilizers, urea, and a lot of downstream consumer products. This could get ugly, and the more days we go out in this blockade, the longer it's going to take to get things back to normal. Not just restarting the refineries, restarting the aluminum plants, getting the ships reloaded, getting the workers back up to speed, yada, yada, yada. But we're talking insurance is fucked up long term. Routing, inventories, contracts, all would have a risk premium caused by both straits being shut down. Adeline asks, how can Trump block the strait? With air power and destroyers, and it's questionable if it would be completely successful. That's the biggest problem. Even if they seriously wanted to blockade Iranian ports, that puts our sailors and Marines at very, very high risk. It puts all our pilots at very, very high risk. It's not owned by anybody. The traffic lane in the middle of the Strait of Hormuz is international waters. The northern lane and the southern lane, those are international lanes. But they're talking about blocking everything, including the Iranian ports, which is an extremely high-risk move. Okay, and if they plan on starting that Monday at 10, isn't this risking a global economic collapse? Not immediately, but as I describe in this window, as soon as you get out beyond 90 days and you start looking at 180 days of a blockade, then you're talking about major economic problems in virtually all of our allies. And you're talking about blackouts this winter because they won't have enough electricity in places like Italy and Germany and in rural Britain. Britain has a lot of nuclear power, but they still need some backups in some regions. It could get problematic. France is going to be okay. France's electricity is 80% nuclear power. they'll stay hot, no doubt, and they'll be able to sell extra electrons to neighboring countries. But several countries, including Germany and Italy, will have literal rolling blackouts. South Korea is going to be the first one to declare a national crisis because of economic problems, because how much they have to import. Japan will follow suit very quickly after that. If we want to contain North Korea and China, having South Korea and Japan get into trouble really isn't a smart move. And what makes me really nervous about these Goombas in charge in America is they think their whims are solutions. Their grievances are real problems, and their whims are solutions. The chance of, I have to think about that, but what is the chance? Let's do a little research here. Because I'm thinking militarily, it's extraordinarily difficult, especially if anybody else gets involved. Because remember, can anybody stop him from doing this? Yes, the U.S. Congress can. Absolutely. One vote, one afternoon, they can put a stop to all of this. Congress, the House specifically, controls our war policy. Okay? It will take one vote under the War Powers Act, and this all stops. But will they do it? That's another story. I think it's going to take something dramatic on the hijacked Republican MAGA end of things. Like Arkansas is a very MAGA state with a MAGA governor in Huckabee. They go into some state level crisis because of this stuff. Like nobody can afford electricity all of a sudden. Businesses are shutting their doors because they literally can't pay for diesel and power wattage. Then Congress would have to go after the president's policy and vote it down and stop it. Remember, in American governance, there's always a way to stop it. It just takes a set of balls to do it. What is Congress missing right now? Yeah. Short term, the shorter this goes on, the more chances they have. But no one on either side is willing, man. Yeah, I agree. You think Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries is going to go to the mat over this? In practical purposes, we can't. I'm saying, is there a mechanism to do it? Yes, there's always a mechanism in American governance to do it. The problem is, will they act under their own authority? I was just having this conversation with my wife at brunch. There was a reason why James Madison put Congress in Article 1, the very first thing. Article 1, that's where everything starts. What does it start with? Congress, not the presidency. Okay? Remember, the founding fathers were coming out of an era of feudalism in Europe, and they knew how much of an asshole a king could be. The last thing in the world they wanted was the president to have primary authority over governance. That's why Congress is in Article 1. It's there for a fucking reason. And truly, what is the alternative to the Democrats being complicit? I put it a slightly different way. I've been saying for a couple of years now, are the Democrats on the payroll to lose and lose on purpose? Are they just there to give the quasi argument and then side with whatever mistake we're about to make? Whether it's the Iraq War, bank bailouts, Vietnam, whatever we're talking about. Because the Democrats, and I keep saying this, and I because I really truly mean it, and I feel this way, we haven't had a strong Democrat since LBJ. That's the problem. Now we've had a really smart, good man Democrat as president. That was Jimmy Carter. I think Jimmy Carter was a very, very, very good man. Okay, super smart, a nuclear engineer in the Navy, smart man. Okay, but the last tough balls to the wall Democratic president we had, Lyndon Baines Johnson. That's a problem. That's a problem. Nobody should be complicit. Nobody should be complicit to a bad policy, to a failing outcome we know it has so little chance of being successful. Who's going to save us? We're going to save ourselves in the midterms. It's just going to be a very hard road between now and November. Okay. Let's go back to Hungary. I started off talking about the Orban losing by a mile in Hungary today. What happened to Orban and his party in Hungary is a bellwether for what's going to happen here in America in November. Okay, the courts are not going to allow ICE to show up at the polling places, nor will the state attorney generals. No. The states are even the red states are putting their foot down. Okay, Oklahoma is telling Trump, no, we don't need your help running an election. We got it because guess what? The Constitution says it's the state's job, not the president. How much authority is assigned to the president through the Constitution or statute when it comes to elections? Let me give you the exact number. 0. The president has 0 authority when it comes to elections. The elections are mainly run by the counties, by the way. Okay, they are administered and regulated by the states. They are overseen by the federal government. None of that means the president has say in how an election is processed, completed, counted, or adjudicated. Okay, and I think both red states and federal judges, including federal judges he appointed, are telling him that. Okay. Now, on the dark side of this, I don't want to see any violence, of course, but the dark side of this is veterans groups are talking about showing up. If ICE shows up, veterans will show up. Okay, and if veterans show up, ICE will lose. Okay. I don't think you'll get a northern commander who will accept the illegal order to move military troops to polling places. I think he will lose generals before that happens. The generals will look Hegseth straight in the eye and tell him, no, this is an illegal order. We cannot fulfill that illegal order. They will try. They will talk a lot of shit about the elections, okay? Because that's their whole thing. Mail-in voting is bad. How has dear leader Pornstar Humper voted in the last several elections? By mail-in voting in Florida. Okay? It's just a hustle. It's just a dodge. All their election shit is about maintaining power. Okay? And what's starting to scare even the red state governors is the shit they're pulling in Minnesota. Like Governor Stitt of Oklahoma is going, hey, I don't think many Oklahomans would like the fact if somebody started sending in Minnesota's National Guard into Tulsa. Okay? So they're seeing a real reason why the 10th Amendment is there, why states themselves have rights under the Constitution. Okay? And even the conservative governors, not the whack job nationalists, Stitt is a conservative. He's not a nationalist. Huckabee's a nationalist in Arkansas. Okay. Greg Abbott is a poser nationalist in Texas. Ron DeSantis is a full-blown self-entertaining nationalist in Florida. Okay. But the conservative governors are going, no. John Offset be the guy to help us win. I know he's well liked, but he's not at the top of the polling right now. We need a multi-factor candidate that can cover several bridges. One, they have to be likable. Okay, that is the problem with running Hillary Clinton. She was the most unliked Democratic candidate in modern times. By the way, not just disliked by Republicans and independents. She was disliked by Democrats too. Okay. Kamala Harris never had solid numbers. She never really did. Okay. And I know she got sandbagged. Okay. I don't think she was a strong candidate being an independent looking at this. from the outside. But she definitely got sandbagged because the Democratic National Committee and the committee to reelect Biden couldn't have screwed that up anymore if you tried. Who will it be? I don't think it will be Bashir or Mark Kelly. I think what this is me just looking at the tea leaves. Don't take this as gospel. This is just me looking at the tea leaves right now. We're still a bit out. Polling doesn't really matter right now, even for the midterms, never mind the presidential election. But you need somebody who is likable as a person. Okay? You need somebody who is strong on the self-understanding of policy and the mistake of policy over the last 10 years. Because both Biden and Trump have made mistakes. Okay. Trump's were a lot worse. Hell of a lot worse. But you have to know, if we're going to turn the ship, we have to understand what's wrong with the ship and what's wrong with the direction the ship is going. Okay. And I think I talked about, I think the last time we were talking about candidates, I think she just joined. Hope, yeah, Hope just joined. I think she had the question of, it has to be somebody that is moving toward the center, has to be likable, has to be attractive to independents. That's the key thing. And this is something the RNC, the Republican National Committee, and the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, this is something they both will lie to you about. They think all they need to win is their party and a couple of crossovers from the other major party, and the election is there. Bullshit. It hasn't been like that, especially in places like New England. It hasn't been like that in 40 years. You have to get your independents on board with your campaign, or you're fucked. Okay. Tellerico, I like that guy. He is the perfect white boy for Texas right now. Okay. Because he's a white boy who's actually a seminary Christian. Okay. Actually has a degree in theology. Okay. And is anybody else having a volume problem? Anybody else having a volume issue? So put it in. Turn up your volume a little bit, because I think it's Substack that's controlling the output volume on your end. Sorry, go back to Tellerico. He's the perfect guy for Texas right now because he's a Christian that understands the book of Matthew and Sermon on the Mounts in the Bible. This is one thing the MAGAfied, politicized Christian, whether they're MAGA or Opus Dei Catholic or whatever right-wing sect or right-wing clique over on the side, they don't believe in the Bible and Jesus. They believe in the politicized MAGA Jesus. Okay? So Tellerico is the perfect guy to sit there and look him square in the eye going, the real teaching is in the book of Matthew and the book of John. Sermon on the Mount is the real biggie if you're going to be talking about Jesus proper. Okay. So yeah, I think for the role he's running for in Texas, he is absolutely perfect. Okay. 100% behind that guy, because he's the guy that needs to call out from their own vantage point. Okay. I'm not religious at all. Okay, I can't convince the faithful that they're not understanding their own teachings. Even though, yes, I've read the Bible, I've read parts of the Torah, I've read parts of the Quran. It's just literature. Okay, but I have definitely read the book of Matthew. Okay, the book of John. Okay, your ideas about human beings and how you should treat other people did not come from those books. And they kind of, in a lot of religious scholars have been talking about this, and some preachers have been talking about this that I'm watching on YouTube, how they're just like literally picking old shit that really isn't part of their teachings, like Leviticus, and telling us Leviticus is more important than the Sermon on the Mount. Well, if you're a Jesus Christ follower, a guy like Tallarico will tell you you're reading the wrong section. And I think that is very important for this election cycle. Somebody needs to clap back at these clowns that have rebooted the moral majority, which we used to call the immoral minority. You know, Jerry Falwell, Jim Baker, all those assholes. Okay, because they're just rip-off artists looking to use the Bible as their roadshow. I don't think they're faithful at all. I never thought Jimmy Baker actually believed in Jesus at all. Hope says the Pope's speech about no war in Iran is breaking more MAGA Catholics off from Trump. Yes, that is true. And the big reason for that is J.D. Vance, again, the toxic moron of the apocalypse, of the MAGA apocalypse. He's trying to be the anti-Pope. Okay. And Vance is literally coming off claiming at the same time, this is his duality and his hypocrisy. J.D. Vance loves to call himself a Roman Catholic, the same sect I was raised in, but Irish in New England. Okay. But at the same time, he's trying to be anti-Vatican. That shit doesn't fly with Roman Catholics. The Big Papa is the voice of God. Okay. There is a hierarchy in the Catholic Church. There's also a hierarchy with the angels. I don't know how many Catholics know that one. J.D. Vance with vomiting emoji. Yeah, that's what we all do when we say J.D. Vance. Oh, great point. Adeline says, I think Tallarico can appeal to MAGA women that won't vote for Trump now. I think you're very, very correct there. Okay, because Trump's hatred of women, it's not just misogyny. Okay, it's not just he's an adjudicated rapist or and also a suspected pedophile in the Epstein class. He has a psychological problem with women, especially black women, but women at large. If you don't have a penis, he de facto loathes you. Okay, I think the only female on earth he actually has any respect for whatsoever is his daughter. I don't even think he respects his wives. Okay. And it's far, like, I've been saying, like, what's the word that comes after gaslighting? Because I don't know. I have the Oxford Unabridged Dictionary in the other room, and I looked it up. I can't find a synonym that means worse than gaslighting. We need words to describe new things because these guys have taken things beyond the point of reason, and it's super scary. But thankfully, J.D. Vance is there because J.D. Vance is pissing off everybody. Like at the very beginning of his hillbilly eulogy days, I was red flagging that dude. Watch out, watch out. The same vibe I got seeing Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil on Oprah. I got the same vibe of con artistry bullshit and looking out for themselves. I saw that exact same thing with J.D. Vance right out of the gate. And he's just gotten worse. And what's with the eyeliner? He wears more makeup than Poison and fucking Motley Crue in the 80s did. And then they're all worried about queer and trans folks. Okay, then take the orange makeup off. Take the fucking eyeliner off. What the fuck? You're all worried about gender affirming care? Jesus, what's with all the makeup with you guys? What's with all the facelifts and hair implants with you guys? Never mind the MAGA women looking like mannequins, that plastic surgery gone wrong. Oh my God. Every time I look, the only one that hasn't totally wrecked her face is Melania. Like Kristi Noem doesn't even look like the same person anymore. Getting a lot of likes out of that one, a little bit. Okay, back to this blockade that could go either way. Iranians could back off, but I doubt it because we killed the hardcore people in Iran and replaced them with people that are even more mad at the United States and the West than the new guy's dad was. The new guy reportedly from a German newspaper, Der Spiegel, is horribly disfigured from the attack and where they tried to kill him. So you don't think that guy's going to hold a little animus, grievance, and hatred for America for the rest of his life? Yes, he will. He's burned and scarred now from the attacks. And all the people around him are more hardliners than the last bunch that were in charge of the asinine country. And the biggest problem with Iran is a theocratic republic. Anytime you have a theocratic republic, you usually have a problem. Okay. That includes the Vatican sometimes. Remember, the Vatican is its own nation state. It just happens to be inside of Italy. Yeah, so this getting over quickly, like less than 30 days of a blockade, I'm thinking the odds are pretty low on that. Okay, if this goes beyond 90 days and starts heading toward 120, 180 days, then you're going to start seeing like a complete reshaping of the global economy and poor economic performance, if not recessions, virtually everywhere. The Center for Strategic and International Studies was pretty impressed how we wiped out the Iranian Air Force and Iranian Navy in just over a week. But we're taking heavy damage too. We're losing aircraft, we're losing helicopters, we're losing personnel, we're losing radar sites. We're seeing ships damaged. We had a laundry fire that injured 200 sailors on the Ford and had to go to Crete for repairs and cleaning, and had to give the sailors some shore leave because they've been at sea for a long time. They're going a little buggy. There's a reason sailors get liberty. You need some psychological relief because some of those, like if you go out on Westpac, that's 6 months. Okay, so when you get liberty in the Philippines or liberty, in Thailand or something, yeah, you get off the ship and unwind because you need to. But if this goes long term, the longer it goes, the less likely we're going to be successful. We may get some pushback on the Iranians in a couple of vectors, but it won't be overall successful. We won't solve the Iranian problem the way they think they can solve the Iranian problem. And Iran is a problem. They've been a problem since the 70s, obviously. Okay. Short term, can we basically cordon off traffic and make leaving an Iranian port pretty much impossible? Short term, yes. That's likely. Okay. Can you do that blockade without a major blowback? That's a coin flip at best. You got a 50-50 chance not fucking up the entire world economy and severely hurting our Far East allies, which are critical to the defense of the free world, including the United States of America. We're talking Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, the Philippines. What are the chances of a true strategic success where we get an agreement? They're not going to enrich any more uranium. They're going to work with the French to build peaceful civilian reactors for electricity, not bombs. They're not going to fuck with other countries in the region, yada, yada, yada. They're going to play nice with Israel, even though Israel doesn't want to play nice with anybody, including us. And I've been saying this for years. This has nothing to do with the Iranian war. After 9/11, I said that if America wants to make itself safe, we would severely reduce our relationship with Israel. But now we're totally in bed with them, and we're basically taking orders from Bibi Netanyahu as a country. And that's a major mistake. Could we make it tactically work, a blockade? Short term, yes. Probably likely. Will we be able to do that without hurting Japan? without hurting friendly South American countries, very friendly allies like Germany and in Europe? No, we will hurt every one of our allies doing this while we're hurting ourselves. Okay. Is any true armistice where we get what we want out of that armistice and we have true regional strategic success? Everybody I'm listening to, whether it's 4-star General retired Ben Hodges, Lieutenant General retired Mark Hertling, the guy out of Central Casting there on Blue Sky, and I guess he's over on Substack too now, the CIA retired guy John Cipher, geostrategist Peter Zion, historians, authoritarian experts. They're saying Iran has basically doubled down on being an authoritarian state since we started this. They're more hardcore now than they were before we started this whole thing, this phase. That's a problem. That's a problem. So that makes true strategic success. I put true strategic success under 5% probability. No, about an 85% chance, short term, we can actually do what we want tactically in the region. You know, stop ships from sailing to and from Iranian ports. Stop Iranian oil. Yeah, we can do that short term, 30 days or less. Okay. Outside that, it all becomes murky. There's no way to know it's because it's not just us blockading Iran, it's Iran's response. You know, one of the biggest things you'll hear generals and command sergeant majors talk about in the military is the enemy gets a vote. You can make any plans you freaking want to. As soon as the enemy gets involved, they have a say in what's going on. Okay. Now, can you do this without any major blowback if they go after the oil fields in the UAE, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia? No, it's going to be a worldwide catastrophe. It's going to be bad. Okay. The risk of the Iranians lashing out against globally sensitive targets, very high, very high. They've already hit the aluminum smelters in the region. That's critical. They're hitting pipelines. They're hitting terminal points where they pump the oil onto ships. Them stepping up, they went after the port of Haifa in Israel. They're trying to literally blow the port of Haifa off the map with cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. Okay. And remember, China gets 90% of their fuels and all downstream products from the Middle East, most of that from Iran. You think China is just going to sit there idly by and let Iran be brushed off the map? Not that we could physically do that if we wanted to, but it doesn't even get anywhere close to that. And China's going to intervene. At minimum, they're going to be supplying Iran with the technology and arms. They could really turn this into a stalemate. The same way that European support and American and Canadian support to Ukraine has turned the Ukraine-Russian conflict into a virtual stalemate. And again, the further this goes out, further you get beyond 30 days, the more harm you're going to cause to everybody, including ourselves and our allies, and the less likely you're going to get a strategic outcome that you're looking for. Now, if we do not get a strategic outcome out of this, this will go down as one of the biggest U.S. military failures of all time. Because no matter what Pete Hegseth says, lethality, bro, hitting targets is not a strategy. I had that conversation twice already with the Command Sergeant Major Green Beret. He was just here at the house. We had a micro conversation of a repeat, and we're like, no, that's not it. That's not blowing shit up is fun, but it doesn't solve the problem. It's not a strategy. Hope says, don't believe this administration cares who we hurt unless it's the big donors. Yes, because the only thing, Adeline asked, what's going to stop him? The market. There's two things that are going to stop him: voters, you and I, or the market crashing. As soon as the market crashes and he can't pretend he's rich with his other rich buddies, he he has nothing to stand on. His soapbox gets pulled out from underneath his feet. So you're right. Yeah, the big donors in the markets is all he cares about. His perception of wealth is what he really cares about. So yeah, we wake up and the market loses 5,000 points. The U.S. Navy is just going to sail away from the Arabian Peninsula like nothing fucking happened. We're out of here. Peace out. You know, and it's not just equities that are in danger right now. Okay. What do you do if you fuck up the underlying bond market here in the United States and the bond market in Britain? What if you destabilize AIG, Goldman Sachs, and Lloyd's of London? Now fucking what? You're going to let China take over all the financing? Smart move. Not. I mean, we're already doing a list of stupid moves here. Unsanctioning Iranian oil, unsanctioning Putin and Russian oil. All we're doing is making them money and giving them a budget to buy more weapons to fight us. Meanwhile, we know Putin is targeting American troops and vessels and airfields and handing that information to Iran. We already know that for a fact. So yeah, time is of the essence here. The longer we're at this, the worse it gets. But let's go back to the high note of the day. Orban's out, and that means a lot. Will it shift the Trumpian politics in America? Probably not. Trump, Vance, Musk, the rest of the idiot show, Ross Voice, they've already dug their graves, their political graves. And their answer is don't dig 6 feet, dig deeper. Okay. So they are going to dig deeper. The thing is, they're going to run right into a brick wall with everybody. They're going to run into a brick wall with the military. They're going to run a brick wall with voters. They're going to run a brick wall with the markets, with bonds, insurance. All this is going to come to a head. Hell, even law enforcement is pissed off now. Did you hear that DeSantis's own border patrol, remember he had to make his own fake border patrol because Governor Abbott made his own fake border patrol? So there's a sheriff's council, which is elective sheriffs in the state of Florida. They told DeSantis to knock the fucking immigration shit off. He's destroying the states and he's ruining businesses. And he's making counties unsafe because now people won't talk to the sheriff's deputies anymore because they think all the sheriff's deputies are dicks because of this immigration policy. Okay. They're at more loggerheads than they realize. Okay. Because any radical political movement is blind as a bat. Sure, they can still navigate, but they really can't see. Okay. A lot of political movements showed this throughout history. This is just a really high-formed, highly developed case of that. So if this Iranian policy affects the economy, MAGA already hates him. My Truth Social tab. He attacked every big MAGA mouthpiece that used to be his biggest supporters. Candace Owen, Megyn Kelly. He went after a whole list of the influencers that are actually the core of MAGA. And now even insurrectionists like Trisha Rogers is saying Trump is insane and she wants him to get the 25th Amendment and get thrown out of office. And she isn't the only one in the J6 crowd or the J6 supporter crowd that's saying it. Okay. So yeah, there is a big loggerhead for MAGA. The Orban election just proved it. Trump tried to throw everything, including a promise of economic support of Hungary 2 days ago to try to shift the election to Orban's favor. And when you look at the turnout map, it's beautiful. Remember, I've been talking about turnouts for the November election. I've been talking a lot about this. Okay. They have an average of 66% turnouts in the districts in Hungary, and it ended up being a complete blowout for the ruling party. the ruling authoritarian party. So turnout matters. Okay, us communicating with our friends, our family, our coworkers, our fellow churchgoers, our federal shooting club owners, okay, whomever, okay, guys we play ice hockey with, who cares? We need to start bonding into a political center that actually solves problems and actually carries this country forward. Because right now we're in a complete destruction, a deconstruction mode of America, and it ain't fucking working. And guess who's starting to realize that? J6ers, MAGA influencers, Republican Party strategists, Republicans in Congress, red state governors. Okay. We're not out of the woods yet. I don't want to present false hope. He can do a lot of damage. Even if he suddenly like strokes out, hits the floor, it's over, JD Vance has to ascend, then we get a bigger idiot. Okay. It isn't until we have a functioning Congress after the midterms and November election, January swear in. It's not till we have a lucid, purposed, functioning Congress do we start actually fixing things. Because one of the biggest thing Iran shows is we need even a stricter War Powers Act. Like if the president thinks there's an immediate threat, which there was no immediate threat with Iran, even the right wingers, even the far right types are saying that loudly. There was no immediate threat with Iran. That part's bogus. Okay. Even if there was an immediate threat to America, you've got to limit the president's ability to solely command the armed forces without the permission of Congress to the matter of days. No more of this weeks and months shit. If you don't have an affirmative vote for Congress, you've got to pull the troops back. I think short of that, we'll be in the same problem down the road. And it's not necessarily with a Republican president. Okay. Remember, Bubba Clinton fired cruise missiles into a baby food factory to change the news cycle from getting a blowjob in the Oval Office. That happened. That really happened. I've got to change the A block on Fox News, so I'm going to change it with a cruise missile. We need much stricter accounting on how we use the military as part of our foreign policy. And the War Powers Act needs to be strengthened. And if we don't, we could be spending, what do they want now? $800 billion more in over 2 fiscal years. This is insanity. You keep telling us we have no money for anything. None for education, the arts, for pediatric cancer research, for our forests and our parks and our lands and our seashores. We have no money for everything. Everything must be deconstructed, but we need $800 billion more for a war in Iran. No. In fact, I'm thinking the complete opposite direction. I'm thinking that we should vote in people who want to pass a bill that defunds both law enforcement and the military by 5% a year for 10 years until they can show us they have a purpose. Because if starting a war you can't win in Iran while financially ruining Americans, Canadians, Germans, the British, the Japanese, the Australians, if that's your military policy, you've got too much money, time, and resources available to you in the military system. Same thing with law enforcement. If you got time to go beat up on immigrants who are legal residents of this country, or you're attacking tourists who have legal paperwork and forcing them to post a $9,000 bond because they went to a baby shower. That's what they just did to a Canadian woman. Held her in custody for 9 days, forced her to pay a $9,000 bond for the crime of legally being here on a tourist visa to go to a baby shower. Okay, if you think you have time to do that and you call that law enforcement, cut the fucking law enforcement budget. And I'm thinking not 5% a year. Scare the fuck out of the shit out of the cops. Okay, you think driving around in the tank and polishing the tank's tires so they look good for the Proud Boys, if you think that's law enforcement, then we cut your budget next fiscal year by 25%. Then we start cutting it 5% a year until you tell us the real job you're going to do. Because the biggest cost in the federal budget is the military. It's not Social Security. It's not Medicare. It's the military. Debt is number 2. Okay. What's your biggest cost at the muni level? Your local police. Okay. We know how to cut the budget and save money. Do you want us to do it? We will. We'll find the candidates that are willing to do it. Because right now, I'm so pissed off about wasting money in Iran and this haphazard shit where we play whack-a-mole with fighter jets and declare victory when no victory has been achieved whatsoever. Then I think we need to slash their budget until they wake up and tell us what their real purpose is. Because if whack-a-mole is your purpose, I'm not down for sending another $1 trillion on that. They sent a DACA young man to Mexico and he doesn't speak Spanish. There's all those problems. Those are terrible. They're not deporting people. Don't use the word deportation. That is the wrong word. I looked it up. Deportation is not what they're doing. What they're doing is forced exile. That's something completely different. Okay? And forced exile is against international law. You can deport people back to their home countries. You can't just spin a game wheel, and when it lands on Nicaragua or it lands on Venezuela or it lands on Costa Rica or it lands on an African country we've bribed, oh, that's where we're sending you. That's not deportation. That's forced exile. That's wrong. And if you haven't committed any crime, why the hell are we deporting them? We need the labor. That is the economic truth of the situation. We need the labor. Who just said that? The sheriffs on the deportation council for DeSantis in Florida. Who already knew this? The right-wingers who learned from themselves 20 years ago that deporting all the melon labor, the watermelon, the cantaloupe labor out of Georgia makes Georgia farmers poor again. Yeah, Georgia was the first one to do all of this. It wasn't Texas or Florida or the federal government. Georgia did it first 20 years ago, and it was an utter fucking disaster. They lost $2 billion in the melon market in one season. Why? Because they thought nobody should live here unless they're a good American. But then they looked at their fucking communities and realized half of the people are immigrants. You take away half the people out of this country, the economy will fail. Okay, like the fucking idiot running for the Texas Railroad Commission went to CPAC, a week and a half ago? I think it's a great idea that we're going to deport 100 million people out of America that shouldn't be here. Okay, the actual number is 13.9 million that are illegal, that don't have all their paperwork together. It's not 100 million. That's a lie. Second of all, just deporting the roughly 14 million people, it's rounded up a little bit for easy numbers, is going to cost us, from a study from the American Immigration Studies, it's going to cost us $330 billion in total cost to just get the 13.9 million out of the country. Okay? And the chances of success of getting all 13.9 million out of the country is very low. They keep grousing this number of 100 million. Okay. You would have to spend about $2.25 trillion deporting and exiling 100 million people. And the economy would fail when you hit about 25 to 30 million deportations and exiles. Okay. It's literally a policy you cannot achieve, yet they're selling it to you as it is gospel. It's already a solution we have in hand, and we're ready to do it, and we know how we're going to get a win. Except when you read the studies say you'll go bankrupt first. You'll destroy the economy first. Food will come off American tables first. You will not, I'm not talking just about lettuce and artichoke. Okay, who do you think works the chicken plants? Immigrants. Who works the sugarcane fields? Well, mostly the Haitians, immigrant Haitians. Okay. If they actually did what they wanted, they talk smack about, it would destroy the economy. And we'd all be poor. And then all your F-35 jockeys will be standing there in an Amazon warehouse looking for part-time work. Because guess what? We wouldn't be able to afford anything after you actually tried this. It would literally melt down the economy. And you wouldn't have to worry about cutting the military budget because there wouldn't be any money for the military anyways. We would just have to go bills unpaid. If they deported people like the way they're talking about, you would deport 1 out of every 7 or 8 nurses. We already have a nursing shortage that's getting worse because of Trump's hatred toward professionals. And his hatred toward women in professional roles. That's why he said he's going to declassify all nursing degrees, including nurse practitioner PhDs. He's going to decertify all of them so they can lower the amount of student loans they can get. Why is my camera doing that again? It'll fix itself in a second, hopefully. So nurses are already fleeing to Canada and Britain and Germany because they're getting better offers to work there. Nobody's threatening to take away their degrees and call them, unskilled labor because, it was a flex by the lethality bro crowd. Okay. All it would do is cause shortages. Okay. And people are starting to wake up to these facts. Take the win in Hungary today as a massive, massive event in world history. In current events, it couldn't be larger. This is a dynamic situation on planet Earth. Okay. The tide is starting to turn. Bolsonaro's went to jail for 27 years. Yoon is going to get a life sentence. I don't think they're going to shoot him in the firing squad. That was their first threat. He's probably going to get life in prison. Okay. Orban is out. Orban was blown out of the water politically today. He didn't win a fucking thing. Neither did his party. This is one of the biggest blowouts in election history in Europe. And that's a good thing. It's also a good predictor because I consider it zero likelihood that Dear Leader Pornstar Humber will change anything. His policy, his bad attitude, his hatred, his animus, his grievance, his misogyny, his racism, none of that is going to change. He's invested in his brand because his brand is keeping him out of prison. That's why he wanted to become president. Okay. And he's promised everybody pardons, everybody under the sun pardons, including the Doge guys. Did you guys see the tapes? The Doge guys admitted they were committing felony computer tampering and data theft. They knew what they were doing was criminal. They were just counting on a pardon from Trump when the DOJ dropped charges on them. This regime probably wants concentration camps to run our slave labor and citizens to join the military or private police. Yes, I've said before, they want their plantations back, but the plantations will be owned by private equity. Yeah, this is a true totalitarian movement under Trumpian politics. They're not kidding. Okay, and that's another blowback. Yes, these warehouses they're trying to buy or rent or lease or whatever all over the country, these are concentration camps. These are not county jails. These are not city jails. These are not proper detention centers. I worked in both a military custodial environment and a civilian peace officer custodial environment. What they're doing in these concentration camps is not proper custodial procedure. I'm not guessing. I'm telling you as a fact. That's not it. If you're having so many in custody deaths, you're not even doing basic care properly. Never mind providing proper access to doctors. Just because somebody's in jail does not mean you can prevent them from seeing a medical personnel if needed. No. Okay. And the blowback on the warehouse buildings, they're going to be turned into camps. The local governments are moving against them now in hilarious ways. And they're starting to copy each other. Like the hippies up in Washington, I think it was Washington, figured out that you need a permit if you're over a certain amount of water usage. and these warehouses are going to use millions of gallons a year, and they're warehouses that weren't never zoned to be big water users. So the building inspectors walking over and turning their city water off and red tagging the building. No occupations, you have no water, you have no electricity. I'm red flagging the whole building. You have no right to use the building the way you are. One town, the warehouse would have used they're in a group contract with several small enclaves and hamlets. And where this warehouse is, not only would they use that town's water allocation, but they would use 3 out of the 6 towns or enclaves or hamlets. They would use half of the water allocation for the entire water district. One building. Okay. The county went, no. And they shut it down. Okay. The tide has turned. The ship's changing course. However you want to phrase it. Things are happening. Don't take your eyes off the ball now. Okay. Today was huge. Why? Because it gives hope to Europe, and it gives hope to us in America that things can change. No, yeah. The undocumented. Yeah, I read about that. The people who are asking to be deported aren't being deported. Why? Because campaign donors are making money running the warehouses as concentration camps. And by the way, the amount of money for them to sit in a shipping warehouse in a dog cage cost more money than any county jail in the United States. I read about that too. So they're charging us inflated prices to not deport people while they're complaining that not enough people are being deported. Now they're warehousing them for the biggest profit available to a campaign donor who's affiliated with Dear Leader Pornstar Humper. So we have campaign donors who give money to a known rapist and a suspected pedo to run illegal, immoral, unethical camps that don't follow any custodial rules. Am I getting all this right? I think so. Yeah, I think that's where we're at. Okay. Thank you all for being here. Nice crowd today. Thank you for all the comments and questions and everything. I love the interaction. Stay strong. Remember to breathe. We're not out of the woods yet. Today's a great day. Okay. Today was a good day. Quoting Ice Cube. Okay. Today was a good day. May I ask you what you think about Xavier for California governor? I'm looking into him. Obviously, Swalwell's out. That's bad, and he has to be thrown out. He has to be unendorsed. He has to be thrown out of Congress immediately. Fuck Eric Swalwell. I don't care if the allegations aren't 100% true. If they're 50% true, you don't belong in Congress. Neither does Tony Gonzalez from Texas, who his staffer committed suicide because he was sexually harassing her. He's got to go too. And I think what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks is you're going to have tit for tat expulsions out of the House. You're going to see as many as 4 people get kicked out. So it can't be Swalwell. Xavier, I know his background. I need to really get into his policies he's running with in this cycle to see where I'm going to go, because I'm scratching my head for California governor. I'm really scratching my head. I know it can't be Steve Hilton, the guy Trump just endorsed. He's a fucking British guy who advised David Cameron. What? Foreign influence. And now we're going to have a British guy run California? No. So is Xavier kind of by default a leading candidate? Yes, because Hilton's a jerk off. I don't want what David Cameron wants. California does not want what David Cameron wants. So Hilton's out right out of the gate. Swalwell's out because of problems. Okay, nobody should be considering him now. Nobody. If you're still loyal to Eric, you've got the same problem the Trump supporters have. Okay, you've got to call balls and strikes as balls and strikes. If you're going to call them differently because the different teams at bat, then you're out. You're not making any sense. You're wrong. Okay. So yeah, I'll look into them more. And maybe we'll talk about them in another live session here coming up real quick. Because, yeah, we need to find out the candidates that make sense and immediately filter out the ones that don't. Okay. I still say Xavier's in the running. I just don't have enough info right now to really speak to him. But I know two that should definitely go away. Okay. Enjoy the day. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. Enjoy the fact that we had a win in Europe, and it's huge. Enjoy the fact that Orban is not the only one that lost. Putin lost. Farage lost. Vance lost. Dear leader porn star Humper lost. Okay. The whole pan-nationalist movement lost today, and it's a beautiful thing. Okay. Be independent. Vote independent. My wife and I were talking about this at dinner this weekend. We need more younger people and more independent people. Run for office as a local office as an independent. Okay. Breathe, pay attention, find good information sources, get your family and friends off of bad information sources. Okay. Don't start with hyper-partisanship, then try to find reality. World doesn't work that way. Okay. So until next time, please enjoy the day. Today's a great day, but we still have a lot of work to do in the future. And please think about it. Peace out.